Well, hello, I'm Ed Parco, one of the hosts of, and this is Amy T. Meyer, the other host of. I like that video. I think that's a great video.
I do too. It'll be nice when there's a voiceover for it too.
When's that happening?
I don't know.
Oh,
I
well,
thought you were the
brought
one
it
that
up.
said,
I thought you were doing it.
yeah.
Sorry. We decided not to do that. We weren't at that meeting we had. That was a meeting with myself where I decided that it's going to be too much to do it. We'll just not do it for now. We'll keep it for the screen, and then we'll just do on the beginning of the podcast. We'll just talk about it. And if, for people who don't know, Helping the Brave is a podcast. It was a live only for, I don't know, the last year. And we've taken all those episodes and they're everywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts, even on Audible. So
Very cool. Well, let's bring in our guest today.
I'll bring her in for you. Oh, you did it.
Hey. So this is Rebecca Anderson, and she is a U.S. Army veteran, and she is here to share her story. So we always ask to begin with.
Hold on, before you do that, by the way, my son is in the airborne medic up in Alaska. Just thought I'd let you know. So even though I'm Navy, I have nothing against Army. Amy does because she actually quit the Army to join the Navy. So I don't understand what that means, but just so you know.
That's so lovely. I think all branches have just a purpose for everyone, but I just say Army strong
You're
all the way.
Too nice. You're just too nice.
Yes.
All right, so you go ahead, Amy. Do your question. Sorry, I interrupted you.
So, why'd you pick the Army?
Because I wanted to be an Army chaplain. And I wanted to do something great enlisted before I went into the chaplaincy program. And so I chose the Army. I was like, I'm going to go in. I'm going to be Army strong. And I was a mechanic. I was an all-wheel mechanic. And I had an airborne contract. And I was like, I just had it. It's just like, we're just ready to get down and dirty. And that's why I did it.
Did you watch MASH as a kid?
No.
Ever watch MASH, the series?
I did see it, and my dad watched it, but I didn't fully watch the series of it. But I'm a country girl. I grew up in the country,
so tell us about your Army experience.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting again.
I was going to say, tell us about your Army experience. Did you love it? Did you hate it? I mean, how'd it go?
I had the most amazing experience from, I will tell you that my recruiter, I believe everybody's recruiter lies to them, but my recruiter definitely lied to me. So he told me when I was going in that I needed to pack a suitcase because I had a 2-week victory block leave and I couldn't come back home. So I packed a suitcase thinking that I'm staying on the East Coast, but I couldn't come back home. So I packed church clothes, I packed workout clothes, and I'm going to basic training with this big old suitcase, and people have this backpack on their back and they're looking at me, and I have this suitcase and a bag, and they're dumping out all of my stuff. And my last name was Hooper at the time. I wasn't married. And they're like, Hooper, why did you pack high heels to basic training? And they're like, are you a stripper? Are you a hooker? They're like, you're a stripper, you're a hooker. These are hooker shoes. And they were filming it, and it just went all over base. So I was known as the stripper soldier that packed high heels to basic training. And I was like, no, drill sergeant, I'm a pastor. I'm not a stripper, I'm a pastor. And so they just went this whole time, and they just targeted me from there all the way out. It was absolutely amazing. I loved it, every part of it, even going through the basic training and then up and through all of my training. It was just nice. It was hardcore. It was a lot of fun. I ended up not being able to wear my heels, and they let me come back home for the victory block leave. So it was amazing.
Well, at least you had clothes for afterwards. Most people don't have any clothes when they get, when they get their first break. They have no clothes. They got to buy everything.
Yes, I had a whole bag of clothes when I went to AIT. It was nice.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he lied to you, but he made sure you were prepared.
Yeah, I felt like he lied to me.
I think I
I
would have
just didn't
felt
tell you
something worse.
exactly the truth. He was
Yeah,
like, "Did it
so
happen?" He called everybody there. "Did she bring it all like I said told her to?" "Yes. Here's $100. We all owe you $100."
and when I told him the story, he started laughing. Like he thought it was the most hilarious thing. He was like, that's just too funny.
All right. So how long were you in the Army?
I was in for a little less than 2 years. I was injured. And I tried. I fought to stay in for a long time, and I did not work out for me.
Did you want to get into that, or is that you don't want to talk about that?
Oh,
You're
I
injured.
can get into that. Yes, my first injury happened while we were on our 10-mile ruck while in basic training. And my back popped and I was like, there's something wrong. And so I wasn't like quite sure, but I kept pushing myself. And we started going through different obstacle courses and a lot of just different trainings to where we went out to the field for 3 days and my hips started to hurt. And I was like, okay, what is going on here? And I went all the way through to AIT and I ended up collapsing while I was doing my 2-mile run. So we're doing our PT exam. So I did the 2-mile run and we did the push-ups and sit-ups. So I did the 2-mile run in 14 minutes and 17 seconds. I did 73 sit-ups and 92 push-ups. And I collapsed after the run. And they took me and I had a full bone exam and I had 13 hip fractures. I had herniated the disc in my back. I had torn the femur from my leg and my knees. I had ligaments that were torn in my knees as well. And I also torn my hip flexor.
No, this wasn't Ranger School, right?
No. No. It just turns out that my body type wasn't ready. I mean, I was in shape. I was fit. I was an athlete my whole life. And it was because I was born with fetal alcohol syndrome that my body could not handle that kind of pressure. And I didn't know that, and then the back injury itself caused the hip fractures and then all of the other issues that I had.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yes, it was very painful. Thank you. I mean, not that it was actually more painful that I had to get out of the Army. I went in at a later age. I had already had 4 kids and, that could have been a part of it as well. And they had just opened up every MOS to women. And I was like, oh, I got this. Like, I'm hardcore like that. I can go and I can just knock this out. And and that's what I thought, but I was wrong. And, I encourage anybody that is out there, it's like, you make sure you know who you are and what your body type is before you put yourself into that kind of work.
Interesting. Was there, so you were still in for you said just over 2 years or?
Just under 2 years. So I was actually I went through a waiting period of fighting to stay in the military. So I made it all through my training. So I was still considered in training, but I completed all of my training because I never went to my unit. And so I fought to stay in for about 6 months. It was going back and forth between appeals and medical exams and everything that I was going through, but I ended up getting out.
Did they medically discharge you?
No.
What?
And I'm going to be brutally honest here because I think this is something that people need to hear. And after I was injured, they put me on quite a bit of pain medication. And while I was going through my period of like all of the pain and the pain medication, I lost it. Like mentally, I had lost it. My son was in a hit and run car accident. My pastor had died and my foster mother had died all in a week. And I was on the pain medication. They wouldn't let me go home after my son was in a hit and run car accident because I was in the process of being medically discharged. And I walked off the base and I actually went to the airport and I sat there and I was like, what am I doing? I'm like, I'm going AWOL from the military. I need to go back. But I had a drink and I went back and I walked into my first sergeant, his office. And I just started crying. I was like, I just left, I drank and I let him know everything. I was like, I need to get off this medication. I need to get help. And he put it in right there and he goes, well, we're going to chapter you out since you left the base. And so I fought that, and I went through an appeal process on that as well. And it was either try to fight the appeal process for another year or take the chapter and get home to my son. So I took the chapter. I was honorably discharged, but I took the chapter, not the medical discharge.
Now, have you gone back to get the help? I mean, for the things that happen while you're in to get a disability or not?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
The moment that I got out, I learned the whole VA system. I said, I'm going to get this. I'm going to make sure I get compensated for this. I made sure everything was written down while I was in. I had a medical record for everything, and I filed my disability claim. They didn't help me while I was in, but I just had an idea, like I'm very resourceful. So if I'm going to put myself through something, I'm going to make sure I have a way out of it as well. And I went in, I became an intern at the VFW. So I learned the system through the VFW, and I get my full disability claim.
Good. I want to
Yeah.
make sure you got taken care of.
Yes, I
And
just
if I'm
want
looking over here, it's because I was double checking your bio, not ignoring you. I have multiple screens in here. I'm not trying to brag. I'm just saying
no
if I look over
worries.
here, I'm not ignoring you.
No worries. No worries.
All right. So basically when you went through this, you must have had some issues like PTSD or something. I mean, I assume, because it just seems like you went through a lot. And how did that, when you were discharged out, first of all, you didn't want to get discharged out, but then you were fighting it and they did that. That must have affected you personally. I'm
Oh, it
assuming.
did.
Yeah.
Oh, it did. I went through I don't know what it was. I could say, like, I did not want to come back to Washington State. I felt like a failure. I felt like I failed my country. I felt like I went in to serve and to, serve and give it everything that I had. And the moment that I was taken down through a pain medication and through, knowing my family line, knowing that addictions run all through my family line, I didn't know that I shouldn't have taken that, but it was very clear I shouldn't have. It just took me back to old ways. And when I got out, I couldn't come home. I had 4 kids at home, and I was like, okay. And even though my son was injured and everything, I was like, I got in my car and I just drove. And I drove through state to state to state. And I eventually made it home. But I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't know what to do. I was like, I have kids, and it just went from like life was going to be great to just everything falling underneath of me. And it was very hard.
So
how'd you get through it?
That's an excellent question.
Amy was trying to get it out before me. I could tell she was forming it. I'm just much quicker. So.
And I got through it because while I was in the car, I'm a believer. I'm a very strong believer in Christ, and I focused on my relationship with God. And although I was going through the depression, the anxiety, I had physical injuries, in which physical injuries in itself causes severe damage to the brain. And it causes, just anxiety and depression on its own, not just going through a life event like that. And I just focused and I said, okay, I need to look, like I need to plan. So I actually planned my whole life on the way home. And by the time I got home, I knew exactly what I needed to do. But when I got home, my son, he went through his phase after his hit and run car accident. My son was actually born with autism, and he's schizophrenic as well. And he hadn't been diagnosed at that time. So he went through the stages of up and down. And so I wasn't focused on myself. I was focused on my son, and I was going through a survival mode. And I was able to get through that. And to be honest, I don't actually think I got through it until about a year ago. And I went through different stages of my son and his issues. And then they put me back on pain medication because I broke my ankle, and then I dislocated my knee, and then I had 2 surgeries, and then I was back on the pain medication again. And I had a baby, so my hormones came into play. And when that happened, I also had so my PTSD started in childhood. So it was childhood trauma, which I was healed from that for about 5 years until I went into the military and I was injured. again. And so when I went into the military, the injuries and everything that happened, which caused a chemical reaction in my brain to cause the PTSD to kick in and the depression and everything else. So it's a whole lifelong of stuff that I had to go through. And I got through it after I got married. And my husband, it's because of my childhood trauma in my life. And my husband's like, you need to get it together. There's something wrong with you. You need to look at yourself. And I was like, no, it's not me. It's you. You need to stop talking to me like this. You need to stop doing this. And I kept blaming him for something that was going on inside of me. And then when I realized that it was me, I went to my spiritual side and I started praying. As much as I was breaking down, I was crying every other day, breaking down constantly. And this verse just came in my head that said, seek and you shall find, and knock and it shall be open to you. And so I started looking at the deeper meaning of myself, like, what happened to me? Why am I going through this? So I looked at my spiritual side. I looked at my social side. I looked at my my psychological and my biological. So my biological side, I realized that I have a severe chemical imbalance because I was born with fetal alcohol syndrome. I have ADHD. I have learning disabilities. I have that. Plus, I come from a family line of addictions. So first, I had to fix my biological side by changing the way that I eat, by making sure I was taking the right supplements to supplement the damage that was going on in my brain. And then I also I couldn't exercise much. So I just made sure that I was getting out every day, walking. And then my psychological side, I had to learn how to kill my ants. So I had automatic negative thoughts consistently overflowing my brain. And the first thing that I thought was, okay, so if I got one thought here, and then the next thing you know, I got a swarm of ants coming into my brain. And I was like, okay, I got to kill this. I got to kill this right away. So instead of thinking things positive, I started thinking things through. So I would say, is this true? So I would think, oh, is my husband a bad guy? Is this true or is it not true? Because if he said something that sounded mean, I'm like, oh, you're just always mean to me. That's the always ant, which it's not true. So I would say, no, it just sounds mean at this time. So why am I going through this and why am I feeling this? So I would kill that ant. And eventually I just got into the practice of understanding that thoughts and our negative thoughts, our brains are designed to receive hundreds and thousands of thoughts a day, and that we need to understand how our brain works and why it is happening and where the imbalance is there. So I was able to do that. And then more so on the emotional side, I realized that I had an emotional imbalance and I needed to work through that with my hormones from having the injuries and having a baby. So I was able to get my hormones in balance, balanced out, which helped me out there. And then I made sure I surrounded myself with a great social system of people that would empower me and help me through the process.
So that was going to be one of my questions is all these things that you're doing, are you doing them just kind of basically on your own, or do you work within any nonprofits or services that you found to be, more helpful than others?
That is another excellent question. So I started.
Look at that positive feedback she's giving you, Amy, all the time.
I love your questions. Yes, I love your questions. So when I went through my spiritual experience and I got that seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be open to you. That was just looking for the interpersonal self, the Christ within me. But I was in school for ministry and community engagement. I was planning on finishing my degree and master in divinity. And I ended up getting certified in life coaching. And then I got a brain health certification. And then I changed my whole degree program to counseling. And I'm graduating soon with a degree in counseling. And I'm starting a PhD in theology and psychology. So it did start with me looking within myself and seeking the answers because I didn't want to live it that way. I didn't want to live in depression. I didn't want to live in anxiety. I didn't want to, live in moments where something happens. I'm literally just sitting there shaking like I am living in a traumatic moment. I said, this is not me. This is not the life that is for me. And that is exactly why I persevere through each situation. I still have emotional problems. I still feel things. but I know that my purpose is much greater than the trauma, than my past. I know that there's pain in my purpose, and that is how I persevere through it.
Well, I think that's a wonderful story. So thank you for sharing it with us. I have one quick kind of backtrack question.
All right, then I get to ask one, okay? Let's do 1 for 1, not like 2 for 1.
Okay. Is there anything from your time in the Army that you use to this day?
Yes. Yes, there is. I would say I use the consistency. And I'm not as great as my husband because my husband served 13 years in the Army. But before the Army, I was not consistent. I wasn't aware at all. And even in the Army, I had a hard time with awareness because I have ADHD. So just being aware of my surroundings, I had a hard time. But because of that, I became more aware and I became more consistent. I became more organized. And all of those qualities to have just to live in everyday life is amazing. And not just that, I have the ability to relate to other vets as well.
There you go. Excuse me. So my question is, for people who can't do it the way you did it, right? Basically yourself on your own, how do you recommend they get help? Where can they go? Have you worked with any nonprofits that help these people, that help vets? Or, I mean, if they wanted to reach out and they're trying to get help, where can they go?
Oh, I would first recommend is there are nonprofits. There's nonprofits like Live for the 22. I'm sure you've heard of Live for the 22 that provide gym memberships for the 22 veterans that commit suicide a day. I believe there's other nonprofits as well, but the first thing that I would encourage somebody to do is understand their own brain. So I would encourage them to go to Amen clinics. And it took me a long time to actually find Amen clinics, but they work with vets all over the world. They do brain scans that actually show the blood flow in your brain to where if you have PTSD, it's going to show on your scan. If you have a head injury, it's going to show on your scan. They can diagnose you with the brain scan. And they have people that donate just to pay for vets to go into and get their brain scanned. And if they can't, and if there's not enough fund in the donations on Amen clinics, they have an assessment where you can figure out your brain type and figure out what's wrong with your brain and start to live a healthy lifestyle through nutrition, increasing oxygen and blood flow to the brain, and then also supplements and exercise. And the brain, it's like if your brain, just because it is the way it is, if you have PTSD, that doesn't mean you're always going to have PTSD. If you have a mental illness, you will not always have a mental illness. If your brain is unhealthy, it will not always be unhealthy. You can change your brain by taking the right actions. It's just taking the action to do so. I believe working out is important, but it's only one part of it. So you have to look at your psychological, your biological. So check out your biological backgrounds, where you came from. Is there addictions in your family? Is there mental illnesses in your family? And look at all of that and how that's affecting you. For women, we have hormonal issues. So I would encourage everybody to get a blood draw every year, to get a full blood panel to make sure where you're at in your blood. And then also check your social. And if you have a spiritual side, to look at the spiritual. It doesn't have to say, oh my goodness, I believe in God. But everybody has a deeper meaning. So when you discover your purpose and you discover that there's pain in your purpose, it gives you reason to persevere. And that's where our spirituality comes from.
I just want to say thank you for bringing up about the hormone thing, so I can tell my wife that it's all her. It's her hormones.
Men's hormones can be out of whack too.
I can't say that. No guy can say that. You'll get in trouble.
I have to say though, I believe if a man looks at a woman and says, this is your hormones that are acting up right now, and a woman is going up and down in depression and everything, that it is clinically known that 80% of women are misdiagnosed with depression and anxiety because of hormones. PMS is real. A new thing that just came out, PMDD, where it's a hormonal imbalance 2 weeks out of the month. And to get it checked, it's like huge to get it checked. And I encourage everybody to do so.
Yeah, I mean, especially postpartum. That is like so
Yes.
huge. Yeah. I mean, and that gets so undiagnosed. So
Yes, it does. I believe so as well. I went through it myself, and I didn't want to believe it. I'm like, oh, I don't have this. There's nothing wrong with me. But there is, because the body is consistently changing, and our brain is in everything we do. And we don't think about that daily. It communicates to our body and makes all of the decisions for us throughout the day. So if there is one misfire, if our neurotransmitters are firing the wrong way, and it's firing to the rest of our body and to our, and well, I would say to our hormonal system, it would happen. And to keep that balance is very important.
gotcha. All right, I'm gonna put us back to all three. All right, so don't freak out. Well, I mean, no sense being on your own forever. So now we can be equal. All right. Any other questions there, Amy? Because we got about 4 minutes and something. We just try to keep it around 30 minutes just so that people know how it is. And go ahead, Amy.
Okay, so
Because it was 2 for 1. I already had mine. So
because we've been Facebook friends for, I don't know, maybe a year or two.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Rebecca. I apologize.
But we hadn't met in person yet. And I noticed something this last week, that you have a drive for women experiencing homelessness.
Yes, it's a mixture. So it is a drive. It's our first annual Empowered Women's Drive. So it's for women experiencing homelessness, coming out of trafficking, people going through cancer, domestic violence survivors, women living in poverty. And we realize that these basic necessity needs that women should be able to have access to can make a huge difference in their lives. And we have this, and we have this coming up all the way for Women's History Month in March. So we are collecting donations online, so cash donations. And we are also collecting, well, I don't think if there's anybody in Vancouver area, they can bring it to our church location. So we are collecting donations at our church as well. And we have our women's conference, which is on March 19th from 11 to 1 o'clock.
How do people get in contact with you if they have questions or want to contact you? Or do you want that or not?
Yes,
Okay.
I would love anybody to reach out to us. They can connect with us on our Facebook page at Empowered Life Church, or on our website at www.empowered, it's spelled MPOWERED, lifechurch.org. Or they can reach out to my personal Facebook as well. It's Rebecca Anderson.
You didn't keep the Rebecca armystripper.com.
That would have been funny, but one of the ladies that we are working with, she has this sign that says, and it's through Kim's House, is through Exposed Hope, and the part of the donations are going there for women coming out of trafficking. And she has on her website and all of her jackets that Jesus loves strippers. It's just too funny. I had her share her story earlier because she came out of trafficking herself, and she was like, we just have to come together, that everybody has a purpose. It does not matter your background. It doesn't matter if you are a stripper or pimp or, whatever it is, you have a purpose and you don't have to be there.
I think Ed wants that shirt.
No, I don't. I'm good without it. I'm okay.
She'll send it to you.
That's all right. Send it to Amy. She needs support. So basically, the thing you were talking about for women, it sounded like it was any woman in need of these basic essentials, not necessarily where you came from. Any woman who needs. That was the question.
Yes, any woman that needs any basic essential needs, from hygiene products to just hygiene products, because that's what we're doing. So any woman, and there are a lot of women, and I would like to address the homeless veterans, the women veterans that we have out there as well. The rate is much higher, and it is 68% of homeless people have a traumatic brain injury, and a study was done on that. And a lot of our vets have brain injuries, and that is the purpose of why they're on the street. So if we can reach them, and if we can touch them, and we can get them the help that they need, they don't have to be on the streets. We can make a difference together as a community for them.
Yeah, we had somebody on just a couple days ago and talking about basically
Yes.
the same thing, because the fact that he spent time with a lot of them and they have PTSD issues, and they
Yes.
don't want to get, in order to get it fixed, they'd have to get off the streets. Well, they like to be on the streets or in the wilderness because that makes them feel better, camping kind of thing. So they don't want to make
Yes.
those changes. So, all right, anything else, Amy? Anything
No.
else, Rebecca?
That is everything.
All right. If you're watching us and you like what you see, definitely follow us. And thank you, everybody, for your time.
That's right. And if you're watching this after the fact, just hit hashtag replay. And remember that we are also everywhere on this podcast now. So if you want to listen to it, if you can't watch it, you can always listen to it anywhere. So thank you, Rebecca, for being here today. I really appreciate you telling your story.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you and the work that you are doing.
She's just too nice. You sure she's a veteran? I don't think she's a veteran. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.